ready, I believe you can unmute yourself as a co-host. So
yes, thanks very much, Ebony. So start with my reading and then we'll hand it over to Ambika. So beginning with verse 23. Om Tat Sat, the eternal, transcendental sound vibration of the ultimate consciousness, the threefold representation known to indicate the ultimate truth. In ancient times, the Brahmas, the Vedic scriptures, and the performance of sacrifice were ordained by them. Therefore, in accordance to the ordinances of the Vedic scriptures, duties based on sacrifice, charity, and austerity by followers of Vedanta and the ultimate truth always begin well by pronouncing Om, the eternal, transcendental sound vibration of the ultimate consciousness. For persons seeking liberation, uttering that signifies the performance of sacrifices, austerities, and the duty of bestowing charity without desiring any of the fruits of the actions. O Arjuna, the word Sat representing the eternal is designated to signify the all-pervading existence of the ultimate truth. In this way, the sound Sat representing the eternals utilized for all auspicious activities. Being established in the performance of sacrifice, austerities, and charities is described also by the word Sat. Also, action solely meant for the satisfaction of the Supreme is indicative by the word Sat. O Arjuna, offering oblations, enacting charity, austerities, and anything else performed without faith is declared as counterproductive, not in this world, nor in the next. Thanks.
thank you, Dave. Up next is Ambika.
Om Tat Sat. This is recognized as the triple signification of Brahman. By that were ordained of old the Brahmanas, Vedas, and the Yajnas. Therefore, all the performance of Yajna, Dana, and Tapas. Therefore, all the performances of Yajna, Dana, and Tapas of the Brahmavadins, knowers and expounders of Brahman, as enjoined by the scriptural rule, proceed invariably by the utterance of Om. The various acts of Yajna and Tapas, and also Dana, are performed by the seekers of freedom, moksha, aiming not at the fruit, by uttering Tat. As to Sat, it is used to signify the principle of reality and the principle of good. The word Sat, or Partha, is used as an epithet for a praiseworthy action. Firm abiding in Yajna, Tapas, and Dan is also called Sat, and the work done for the sake of that also is styled as Sat. Bereft of faith, O Partha, whatever be the oblation, whatever gift, whatever the austerity performed or the work done, all that is called asat, false, not is it here as well as hereafter. Om Tat Sat.
Thank you, Ambika. Yogeshwar, you're up.
Om Tat Sat iti nirdesho brahmanastrividha smritah brahmanastena vedascha yagyascha vihita pura. Krishna has elaborated upon yajna, dana, and tapa, how they're supposed to be done. What are the three categories of Shraddha when you're doing all the three types of karma? Now Krishna is saying What is the essence of all this? This is like the essence of the whole chapter. After knowing this, you know what karma itself means. Without knowing what Om Tat Sat is, there is no reference to what karma is. Having understood what the characteristics of karma are, and then knowing the essence of karma, then when you go back to do karma, and you do it with the essence, that is when Krishna is saying that it is done with all the vidhi, it's done with all the essence that it's supposed to hold. Om Tat Sat iti nirdesho brahmanas trividha smritaha. Om Tat Sat. Those are the 3 syllables that are used. What are they used for? Brahmanas trividha smritaha. They are used to talk to Brahman. What is Brahman? To know what Brahman is. And it is not that Brahman is divided into 3, that now they have to put it into 3 syllables. But these 3 show you what Brahman is. Without these 3, then there is no way of knowing what true Brahman is. And what have Om Tat Sat done? Brahmanas tena vedascha yagyascha vihita pura. When you know Om Tat Sat, you know what Brahman is. And having known what Brahman is, that is when the other 3 evolved from that. What are the other 3? Brahmana, Veda, and Yajna. Now, in the whole chapter, Krishna has talked about 3 things: Yajna, Dan, and Tapa. And those 2 in 3 categories of Shraddha: Sattvic, Rajasic, and Tamasic. And again, Krishna is saying the essence of all karma is 3. Om Tat Sat. From which also 3 things evolve: Brahmana, Veda, and Yajna. What does Brahmana mean? Brahmana in this context means a person who has known Brahman, because that is what Brahman evolves into. Now, we would like to think that if a person is a Brahmana, he will be the one to make Brahman evolve, to speak about Om Tat Sat. However, Krishna here is saying that it is from Om Tat Sat that Brahmana evolved. Without Om Tat Sat, Brahmana would not be. So who is this Brahmana who evolves from the Om Tat Sat? He is the one who has known the Om Tat Sat. And not only knowing right now, but knowing that all existence comes out of Om Tat Sat, these 3 syllables. And even myself, I have come out of the Om Tat Sat. That is what has led me to the Brahmana. Now, what does Brahmana mean? Brahmana is a Dvija. He has been born the 2nd time. That is a Brahmana. How does a Brahmana know that I have evolved from Om Tat Sat? His 2nd birth is definitely from Om Tat Sat. That's how he knows he is evolving from Om Tat Sat. That is where he has come from. Because when he is born again, in this context, he is born from the Om. In a way, he can hear the Om that reverberates with all of existence. He is one with that Om, and he knows what it means. So he has evolved from the Om. Then, what the Brahmanas speak out, it won't be the Om Tat Sat. Rather, it would be the Vedas. So, Om Tat Sat gives rise to the Brahmanas. The Brahmanas then give rise to the Vedas because they use the same Om Tat Sat, but now they make it accessible to people. They make it accessible to so many people at large. Now the Vedas are the scriptures that hold the essence of Om Tat Sat. Just having these three syllables in context, Om Tat Sat, all the meanings and how they can capture all of existence. That is what the Brahmanas are trying to convey through the Vedas. And the third thing that evolves now from the Vedas are the yajna. These are all the practical elements. These are all the types of karma that are supposed to be done. And that evolves from the Vedas. Yajna in this context means any type of action that you can do. And now that action leads you towards the Brahman, because that action will now lead you to the source. The action itself will lead you to the Vedas to the Brahmanas, and the Brahmanas to the Om Tat Sat. And that is how all action has evolved. Krishna here has talked about Shraddha. That is how all Shraddha has also evolved. Here, Shraddha means that you have seen, you have experienced what Om Tat Sat means. Now, what is remaining is to keep it constant with you, to allow it to become one with you, to allow yourself to evolve into the Om Tat Sat. That is what Shraddha will do. It will allow you to get one with the Om Tat Sat. Now, Krishna is elaborating on each and every one syllable. First Om, then Tat, then Sat. So the first verse is about Om. Tasmadomityudaritya yajnadana tapakriyaha pravartante vidhanokta satatam brahmavadinam. What does Krishna say about Om? He says, for this reason, because everything evolves from Om, Tat Sat. For this reason, it is that syllable Om, after which any type of karma, whether it is a yajna, whether it is dana, whether it is tapa, is done. And Krishna says, pravartante vidhanokta. Not that it is done only after saying Om, but after saying Om, if you do any of these types of karma, they are done with their essence with them. They are not done without the essence. They are not only activity, they are karma that takes you towards Brahman. And then Krishna is adding that satatam brahmavadinam. Not only once, like doing the karma and say it, no, satatam. So what we'll first look at in this verse is Om is said at the beginning of any karma. This is one practice that is done. whether you're starting to read the Vedas, whether you're starting a yajna, whether you want to give a donation, or you want to start doing an austerity, you first start with saying Om. Now, what I would like to do here is make a differentiation between different ways of saying Om. So the first is just saying Om, the word Om, the syllable Om. Having said Om, the syllable itself, now there you remove the Shraddha, you remove the experience of Om itself, just have Om itself. Sometimes that is what remains. Only Om stripped off from the Shraddha, and you remove the Bhava, you remove that essence of Om from it. And only Om is said at the start of any karma. Now, the second type of saying Om, you say Om, and then you say it with first the Shraddha, because you've experienced something comes out of the Om. You've experienced the power of Om. And then at one point in time, you also have the experience of Om itself. When you experience Om, so this is the third type, when you experience Om itself, not just Shraddha, because where do you have to keep Shraddha? Until you have not reached. So after you have reached, then Shraddha is left behind, and only what Om is the third step, the experience of Om itself. Krishna here is saying that having experienced Om in its full level, after that is when yajna, dana, tapa, or any type of karma is done. And one thing to note is start of karma. Now, what does start of karma symbolize? That is just a symbol, because Krishna after that is saying satatam, means continuously. So one thing that is symbolized by the start of any karma is that everything starts from Om. If you can know that when you're starting any karma, first of all, the karma itself will hold the essence. Second of all, you will realize what Om is. Everything, not only the karma that you are doing, but everything, the whole of existence reverberates from Om itself. From Om, everything manifests, and upon Om, everything dissolves. So from where Om starts, like from where manifest starts, it is Om. And then where manifest will go back, because all Hindu philosophy goes in a circle. Where everything came from is where everything will go back to. Everything comes from Om and will ultimately go back to Om. When you do any karma starting from Om, you realize that slowly by slowly. Another point about this verse, vidhanokta. When you say Om with all its essence, first with Shraddha and then with the experience of Om itself, because you are experiencing Om right now. What Shraddha says is that you've experienced it some time and you're keeping that Shraddha that you will receive it again. You'll receive the experience again, and you're doing something for that. Now, after that, you have Om in its full essence. That is the vidhana, that is the essence. If you have Om in its full essence, then you also have all the types of karma in their full essence. There is nothing left behind. And that is what those who know Brahman do. Those who are one with Brahman do. And the aspect of Om is also said in the Mandukya Upanishad. Om ityetad aksharamidam sarvam tasyopakhyanam bhutam bhavad bhavishyat iti sarvam omakara eva yachanyat trikalatitam tadopyo omkara eva. So what the Mandukya Upanishad says is that Om is what everything is. In essence, everything is Om. And in the Mandukya Upanishad, this is the first verse. We are now going to talk about Om. What is Om? Om is everything that was in the past. Om is everything that is right now. And Om is everything that will be in the future. Everything is Om. And the fourth is that everything that is also beyond these three times is also Om. That is what the Mandukya Upanishad says. Yachanyat trikalatitam tadapyomakara eva. Even that which is beyond these three times is Om itself. And in the Mandukya Upanishad, it continues, Sarvam hyetad brahma ayamatma brahma soyamatma chatushpata. Since we have seen that here they're categorizing Om into four aspects. The first categorizing was the three times, the past, the present, and the future. They first said all that is Om. And then they continued to say that what is even beyond these three times is also Om. So that's the fourth category. Then they continue to say that everything is Brahma. I am Atma Brahma. Even who you are is Brahma. Soyam Atma Chatushpata. That is why this yourself can also be categorized into four. What are those four? So I'll just say in summary, the first is what we are doing right now, the state in which we are right now, where we are awake. The second is the state when we are dreaming. And the third is the state in which we are in deep sleep. We are neither dreaming nor awake, but we are in deep sleep. And then they continue to say, what is the fourth aspect of you? Nantah pragyam na bahi pragyam no bhayatah pragyam na pragyanaganam na pragyam na pragyam adrishtam avyavaharyam prapanchopashamam shantam shivam advaitam chaturtham manyante sa atma sa vijñeya. They say that he is not that which is outside, he is not that which is inside. He is not that which is on both sides. And he is also not that which is not there in both sides. What is the Om, which is the fourth? Shantam, bliss. Shivam, Ananda. Advaitam, not two. Because if you say inside, then you have the second, which is outside. But if there's no inside, there will be no outside. Sa Atma, Sa Vijnana. So that is the Shuddha Atma. That is the fourth state. The state in which you are beyond these three states of awaken, sleep, and deep sleep. Beyond these three is the knower, who is the Atman. And the Atman here, they're saying that is Om. Soyamatma Adhyaksha Aksharam Omakara Adhimatram Pada Matra Matrascha Pada Akara Ukaro Makara Iti. Now they're stating the three syllables of Om. The Akara, the Ukara, and the Makara. The first syllable, which is Akara, they're saying it is related to the awakening state. And the Ukara is related to the sleep state. And the Makara is related to that state of deep sleep. Now, what they're saying is, what is the fourth state then? The fourth state is Amatrascha Chaturtho Avyavaharaha Prapanchopashamah Shivo Advaitah Evam Omkara Atmaiva Samvishatyatmanam Atmanam Ya Evam Veda. This is the end of the whole Upanishad. What they're saying at the end of the Upanishad is that the fourth is amatra. It is beyond the u, and the ma. The fourth is the experience of it. The fourth is the reverberation of existence. The fourth is Advaita. The fourth has no second. What is the fourth state of Om? Omkara Atmaiva. Omkara is the Atma itself. And what they have said at the last point in the Upanishad is Ya Evam Veda. He who knows. And the end at that. He who knows. That is the essence of Mandukya Upanishad itself. And Mandukya Upanishad, the whole of it is talking about what Om is. Talking about each and every syllable and how it relates to what we experience. Because we experience these three states. However, we don't experience the fourth state, which is just being. And what Om is all these three states, yes. But it's also the fourth state, which is void of any of the three syllables, u, ma. And the fourth state is just the experience, the reverberance of Om. What it leaves behind, what it is just the fourth state. And with that fourth state, Krishna is saying, all the karma is done. And that karma is always done with the essence, never leaving out the essence. Those who know Brahma, Satatam, they are always with the Om. Now, what does Satatam mean? What Satatam means is Tailadharavat. There is no point at which Om is not known by them. It's like something that comes from their own existence. It's like you can't even imagine that you are without yourself. There's no time you can be without yourself. You're always with yourself. How does that happen? Because It's existence. You can't be without yourself. If not, you are not. That is what Om is for them. Om is existence. And how can you be without existence, even for a second? That is not. So what Krishna here is saying is not the Om just that we say with the syllables, but that fourth type of Om that is said even without any syllable. That fourth type of Om that points towards what existence itself is, that points towards the unmanifest. And this is where we get the point that all the manifest, even though it is Om, if it is manifest through the U, and the Ma, then it is still part of the manifest. It may be pointing to the unmanifest, but it is still part of the manifest. It is when you get beyond these three syllables is when you get to Om, what it truly means. Then Krishna is talking about what Tat means. Tatityanabhisandhaya phalam yajna tapa kriyaha dana kriyascha vividha kriyante moksha kangshibihi. What does Tat mean? Tat means that without following the fruits, without getting attached to the fruits, yajna, tapa, and dana, these three types of action, and also any other type of action, vividha, kriyascha vividha, also any other type of action is done. What that means is thou. It means that. And Om Tat Sat means Om, that exists. When you're saying Om, that is what Tat is, thou. Now, when you're talking about Tat, the first thing is that everything is of Paramatma. Everything is made of the unmanifest. Everything is Paramatman. Everything is Brahman. If everything is Brahman, then the person who is doing the yajna is Brahman. What he's using to do the yajna is Brahman. Even the action itself is Brahman. So why keep the attachment to the fruit? Why not experience Brahman, which is there right now? And when you experience the Brahman, which is there right now, you know what Tat means. Here Krishna has used two things. One is anabhisandhaya phalam. He who does not be attached to the fruits. And then the last word that Krishna has used is moksha kangshibihi. Those who wish to attain moksha, those who wish to attain the ultimate. It may seem as two things, and those two things are apart away. Like you can't say that I do not wish anything, and then Krishna is saying that those who wish to attain moksha. So those are two things that go in the opposite direction. One way to approach this is that the first step towards the samsara, the first step towards the world is wanting something, is the ichha, is the kanksha, akanksha. When you have the want, you can go towards the world. When you have the want, you can get anything in the world. When you have the willpower, there's nothing impossible in the world. Having experienced that, anybody who will now go towards the ultimate will also have this want to get towards the ultimate. Why will he want to get towards the ultimate? So the first thing is that whatever he wanted from here was not fulfilled from the world. So he wants the same thing from the ultimate. What does he want from the world? He wants to be forever. He wants all the prosperity. He wants the Aishwarya. He wants the wealth. So what does that person do when he turns towards the ultimate? He puts all those wants towards the ultimate. And then he sees in the scriptures that, oh yes, the Atman is everlasting, is forever. And when you get to Ishvara, when you get to Brahman, you get all the Aishwarya. So that is, I get more than I can even want from this world. That is why he will take the first step onto Brahman. That is one way of interpreting that. And then slowly by slowly, he will get to know what Brahman is, and he will leave the want. However, I would not like to interpret it like that. I would want to say that these two things are one and the same thing, if you realize it. It is like when you want to sleep, you have a desire to sleep. When you have a desire to sleep, and then you go to sleep, when you're laying down to sleep, if you're continuously wanting that I want to sleep, you'll never be able to get to sleep because that desire will stop you from sleeping. So this is what Krishna is saying. A person who wants to sleep will do the sleeping without wanting to sleep. Because if you continuously want to sleep, you'll never sleep. That is how the whole of the path of ultimate is laid out. If you don't want anything, you will get it. If you, even the want of Brahman, even the want of the ultimate, puts the barrier between you and the ultimate. Because whatever you can want will be fixed in a frame. And that frame can never be bigger than the person who wants it. If you're looking at the vast skies through the window and you're saying, I want the sky, what do you mean? Do you mean you want the sky as it is? Or do you mean you want the sky that you see through the window, that is a cutout of the window? Now, whenever you want, what you can want is only the cutout of the window. You can never want the whole sky because you don't know what the whole sky is. And when you do not want is when you're getting one with the whole sky, is when you're able to get to the whole sky. You're able to get what Akasha is. The same is true here. A person who really wants moksha, who really wants to get to the ultimate, will leave the want aside and continue on the path. That is what moksha means. That is what Brahma means. And that is what the word tat means. Tat means you have to leave all the wants, all the desires aside before you get ahead on your path. Sadbhave sadhu bhave cha saditya tat prayujyate prashaste karmani tatha sat shabda partha yujyate. Where is the word sat used? So sat means existence. What sat is normally translated to is being. Now, being is what it's supposed to be translated to. But then what we understand out of being is I am means being. Rather, I would say, remove the I and just keep the arm. That is where being starts becoming. That is where being is. Being is not in the I, because whenever the I is, the ahankara is, the ego is. So when you remove the I, you get to what Sat is. Sat is being. Sat is existence. Sat is what is. When is Sat said? Sat bhave. Sat is said to existence. Sat bhave. Bhave. Another thing, sadhu bhave. That which reverberates with the unmanifest. For example, the unmanifest Om, which is the fourth stage of Om, can never be said. What would we say Sat is? Sat is the fourth. Yes, we say Sat Bhave, that which is the unmanifest. We call it Sat. But what else would we call Sat? Would also call the Om that is in the manifest, the U, and the Ma. Would also call that Sat. Why would you call that Sat? Is the question. Because it points towards the unmanifest Om. It points towards the experience of Om. That is what Sadhu Bhave means. That which points towards the unmanifest. That which shows you the ultimate. That which points towards that which cannot be pointed towards. Sadityetad prayujyate. Prashaste karmani tatha sat shabda parthayujyate. Another way sat is used is prashaste karmani. In that karma that has all the essence within, in that karma that is the greatest. That karma which is the greatest of all, which is that karma? That karma is that whereby you're doing the yajna, you're doing the tapa, you're doing the danaha, and you're doing it with all the essence, and you're experiencing existence within it. When you're experiencing existence within the karma, when you're experiencing that unmanifest within the karma, that is said by Sat. Because Sat is not only for the karma, Sat is for the existence. So whatever can show you the existence, whatever can show you the unmanifest is Sat. In these three aspects is Sat used. Yajne tapasi dhane cha sthiti saditi chochyate karma chaiva tadarthiyam sadityeva vidhiyate. Sat has been given a special root because it's been given two verses rather than one. Sat has been also given the verse Yajne tapasi dane cha sthiti sad iti chochyate. Not only doing the karma, because we're talking about the karma itself. Now, what does Sat mean? A step above. Yajne tapasi dane cha sthiti sad iti chochyate. When you are one with that karma, there is no difference between you and the karma. It's like when the dancer and the dance are not two, those two become one. That is what Sat is. Because when it becomes one, you experience the Advaita within the existence. You experience the unmanifest that you may not have ever experienced before. Using such karma, when you're doing the yajna and you become one with the yajna, it is not that you remain different and the yajna remains different. Because if the yajna remained different, that's when we can say the yajna was good or bad. But when it becomes one with you, it becomes one with experience. It becomes one with existence itself. When yajna, tapa, and dan are done with sthiti, if your sthiti is within those types of karma, not just doing the karma itself, but then your sthiti within those karma, meaning you become one with the karma. That is also called sat. What do we realize by this? Sat is a pointer. Sat is not saying that I am only talking to the words that sat mean. I am only talking to the experience that sat mean. Sat is saying that anything you do, any karma you do, and you experience what underlies existence, any words that you talk and you experience the underlying existence, or if even though you just stay silent and you experience what the underlying existence is, that is sat. Karma chaiva tadarthiyam sadityeva vidhiyate. Even those karma that are done for tad earth, for the earth, meaning for the reason of the tat. What does tat mean? We have seen what tat means. Tat means without being attached to any type of fruits. And you're doing all the types of karma. And it means that which exists, that. So that, when you're doing it for that which exists, any karma that you're doing for that which exists, for existence, then that is said by Sat. Krishna is summarizing what he means by all the verses in the whole chapter. Krishna is saying, Ashraddhaya hutam dattam tapastaptam kritam chayat asadityuchyate partha najavat pretya no iha. We've talked about what Om Tat Sat means. What does Asat mean? What does that which is not existent? What is non-existent? It is that which is done without Shraddha. Anything you do, you may also do the yajna itself. You may do the donation itself. You may practice austerity itself. But if you've done any karma, even though you think that it will take you towards Brahman, if you've done it without Shraddha, if you've done it without the first glimpse, if you don't get an experience of Brahma within that karma itself, then Krishna is saying that is without Shraddha. Because the next time you do it without experience again, then you are not getting the essence of Brahman. You are not getting towards Brahman. And what happens to that person who is asat? Because not only that karma is asat, because when karma is sat, even the person doing the karma becomes sat. Because at that point, Brahma is not only the karma, Brahma is also the person who is doing the karma. So when the karma becomes asat, even the person who is doing the karma becomes asat. And that person, he doesn't get anything here or even after death. What does Krishna mean by saying, Nacha tat pretya no iha? it doesn't fulfill anything right now. It doesn't fulfill anything when you die. No iha, meaning right now, that karma doesn't have any fulfillment. It doesn't have the Brahman within itself. If it doesn't have the Brahman within itself, then there is no existence of it. It's only if Brahman is in there, if you're experiencing Brahma, that it has its existence. And then what happens after death? Meaning what will happen in the future, because that death will come in the future. Even in the future, nothing will happen of that person. Nothing will happen of that karma. That will remain as it is. That will remain without the essence of the karma. That will remain without the essence of the action. Because when you do any action without the essence of Brahman, without the essence of Om Tat Sat, then you are doing the action without the essence. The main thing is not the action. The main thing is the essence. You're doing the action to get towards the essence. This is a different perspective that should be known, because mainly what we do the action for, yeah, it is for the society maybe, or it is for the self, that I should be looked up as a better person. But here what Krishna is saying, the action should be done for itself, for the Brahman there, because the action itself is Brahman. So the action should be done for itself, not for something outside. Because when you do it for something outside, then you'll get that which comes from outside, because that comes from the world. And from the world, you'll get whatever you want. Any desires will be fulfilled from the world. But no desires can be fulfilled from the Brahman. Because if you can put a window of your desires on the Brahman, you're never getting what Brahman is. You're only getting your desires out. And when you're getting your desires out, that is your worldly desires, always. You're never going to get Brahman. It is when the window of desires is thrown out that you get to the skies beyond. You get to what Brahman means. Om Tat Saditi Srimad Bhagavad Gita Supnishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Sambade Shraddha Traya Vibhaga Yogo Nama Saptadashodhyayah.
Okay, sure. Are you-
Yeah. The chapter is done.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. So now it's time for questions and or comments. If you have a question and or comment, you can type exclamation point in chat or raise your hand in Zoom.
Hi, Avanik.
Hi, Sherry Khan. Perfect timing.
Okay. Give me just 1 second. Okay, give me just. All right. So Yogeshwar, I've been listening to most of what you said. I just missed the last 15 minutes. But what I want to do is so folks, I don't know this well, okay? This is a very deep topic, but I'll tell you what little I know, okay? So the first thing I want to say is that these verses here are equivalent to verse 25 of Tao Te Ching. Verse 25 of Tao Te Ching gives you a full overview of what Tao Te Ching is, Okay, it's at a very high level. It explains to you like the metaphysics of Tao Te Ching in just this one place. Okay, that's why I love these verses. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to talk about how Jnaneshwar explains this. So firstly, a little bit about Jnaneshwar. Jnaneshwar is a 13th century figure. He's a contemporary of Thomas Aquinas. He is the founder of Marathi language, the language I grew up speaking. And my Marathi is decent enough that I can follow most of him with a little bit of help, because 13th century and like 21st century, there's a distance in those language. But he's brilliant. You know, he actually founded the language. He's like a combination of Aristotle and Shakespeare and Martin Luther all rolled into one. And what he's trying to do is he's trying to make Gita accessible to anybody who wants it. In a very fundamental way, Yogeshwar was good enough to explain this to me. Upanishads are the starting point of all this discussion. And Gita itself, Mahabharata and Gita itself, is a way of making that accessible to a common person. What Jnaneshwar does is that he takes that and makes it accessible to people who cannot even read and write. Up until his time in Maharashtra and most of India, only Brahmins who read Sanskrit, studied Sanskrit many, many years, could directly access Bhagavad Gita. Jnaneshwar made it accessible. And I want to show you how he does it with this example, because I find this incredibly beautiful. The way he starts his commentary on this chapter, he's saying, Om is the name of Brahma. And he's saying, how can you actually name Brahma? How does this actually work? So he says, think of your child. It is just born, the infant. Does it come with a name? No, it is what it is. And it's the most magnificent thing. Brahma is like that. Whatever name you give it, it's not going to be Brahma. It's going to be a name of Brahma. Now, if you actually love the child and actually try to capture what the child is as best as you can, in the name of the child will look at you. It will respond to you. That's what you do when you say Om. Trying to capture in that sound your love, your devotion to Brahma or this child. If you just use it as a word disconnected from what the child is, it's not going to do any good. The child is actually not going to pay attention to you. It's only when the child sees your true devotion, your true bhakti to the child that he will respond to that name. I want to connect it up with this concept of Shraddha. The Shra part, it's basically truth. And the is holding, you're holding on to that. So saying of Om is an act, properly is an act of Shraddha. So what you're doing is that with that sound, you are trying to hold the Brahma. And it's a continuous, you get glimpses of it occasionally, and you're holding on, you're remembering those glimpses and trying to make them real again and again through repetitive effort. So that's why I find this analogy beautiful. Some ways, this is the heart of Gita, both what Om is, because Om captures creation, sustenance, and destruction. That entire cycle in that one sound. And then you say the sound, and then you listen to the sound. And that listening to it is that fourth part. It is the part of you're speaking to God and you're listening to God. And that listening is as important as speaking. And speaking is very important. So it's a way of having a conversation with God, with Brahma. That's why I find this just incredibly beautiful. And thank you so much, Yogeshwar. That was just brilliant. I missed a short part of it, but I'm going to look that up. And that Upanishad, I'm going to read that. What did you say? How do you pronounce the name?
Mandukya Upanishad.
Mandukya. So I'll have to read it. Thank you. All right, folks. So now go ahead and type an exclamation mark. And firstly, thank you so much, Evanik, for stepping in. And thank you so much, David, for stepping in on Friday. I've gotten progressively busy. This is a meetup, Gita meetup I never want to miss, but sometimes I have to miss it. And I am just delighted that I can count on my friends, Evanik and David, to step in for the Gita meetup, just like Joe steps in for, handles the entire Dao De Jing himself. And we are in the process of doing more of Comprehensivist Wednesdays. And then Marisa does the same thing on Mondays. So that allows me to keep my work on track and I have lots of new projects that I'm working on, that on track, and how all of these meetups go full blast at the same time. So really, really grateful, folks. All right, so folks, go ahead and type an exclamation mark if you have comments or questions. Joe.
I can't unmute. Oh, there. You can. Okay. I didn't think I could for a minute. It says, all right. Yeah. Thank you, Yogeshwar. This is a very, very deep section. There's a lot that I can go into. But the one that I actually want to focus on is the tut, if I'm saying that correctly, and how that is essentially a way of detaching ourselves from our desires and kind of almost giving our stress to a higher being. And I'm seeing it as like seeing us, meaning, as an instrument of a higher being, and not necessarily, and that is something that is liberating, where we're no longer tied to the outcomes. Am I understanding that correctly with Tut in particular? And then I understand Om, but I may have another question after that.
Go ahead.
So Tat in this context, that's how mostly it's understood. Like everything is of the higher being. It's of the ultimate. That's why I should not have any desires that I attach myself to. But then here, what that means is what in the Om Tat Sat, what the Tat is, it is the same Tat which is used in Tat Tvam Asi Shweta Ketu. Yeah. So what Tat Tvam Asi means is that you are thou, you are that. So that which is Tat there is the same Tat which is here. Here the context is that not that there is a higher being, and you are giving all the possession, all the belonging to the higher being. It is that you are the higher being, and you are so vyapak, you are so vast. Yeah? It is you who is the ultimate. And when you are the ultimate, there is nothing that is not yours, and there's nothing that is of another person. There is no mine and yours, because when mine drops down, yours also drops down. When there is no yours, why should I now start wanting something? Because nothing is of any other person. Why would you want something? And then, since everything is neither mine, neither yours, everything is now. When everything is, there is no want. Where desire comes in is where there's mine and where there's yours. I want something that is not yet mine. I want to make it, I want to bring it in my possession. That is desire. But when you make that mine so vast, it's like inflating a balloon. Like when you inflate it to the max, then the air inside the balloon and outside the balloon, when the balloon bursts, there's no inside and outside. It is like one. When the balloon bursts, that is. So when that is one, when there is no inside and outside, is what Krishna is saying, that tat. So there's no desire now, because it is tat.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Yogeshwar. Nyaneshwar, when he comments on Tat, his focus is to say it's basically acceptance of this largeness. Basically it's saying it's separating you from your limited emotions, thoughts, and you're saying back. And you're just, it's like it's combination of full acceptance and awe, not being attached to anything. So it's a way of emphasizing that. Joe, you had another one.
I can come back to it.
Sure.
It was
Sounds
about
good. Sounds good. Let's go with Doug next. Doug, firstly, welcome back. Wonderful to have you back. Go ahead. So please take your time. Would love to hear from you. Love to hear from you what you get from this.
In reading this and listening to Yogeshwar, I don't know if this is a deceptively complex section or deceptively simple. I mean, it's sort of like I keep going, this has got to be simpler than I'm making it in my head. And the words Om Tat Sat, I have my own associations with them, and they're different from what this particular section is saying. Like the Sat, which I often associate with reading Gandhi and Satyagraha, and which refers even to that word you mentioned in the very beginning that means steadfast or really holding firm. And so, but also there's something very, that inside outside and the disappearance of that. I mean, it does, Yogeshwar was just talking about that, and that makes me think of Bucky, who says every system has an inside and an outside, and that what separates the inside from the outside, kind of the border, which actually in Bucky's world, the border is pretty porous and tends to sometimes disappear. And I find myself sort of responding, going along those lines as I listen to other people talk. But I'm gonna have a feeling I'm gonna really, over the next few days, try to look at this and go into the root definitions, which usually are one-word things, but they're very rich material here. So I'm going to leave it at that for now. I may come back to it, but I mean, and that each, he starts with the 3 words and then different sections, each verses on each of the words. And it was nice to notice there are 2 verses on Sat, and then kind of wrapping it up. It's like a very simple song that somehow is hard to learn and make as simple as it is. I mean, that's, I guess as a performer, I'm going, I'm not, I think I know what's going on, but I don't know at all what's going on. So that's
Wonderful.
all I have to say
Thank
right
you.
now.
Thank you. Yogeshwar, I mean, let me ask you, one of this is a question and feel free to respond to, comment on anything else. Is this deceptively simple or deceptively complex?
In the eyes of existence, if you look like from the views of existence, Paramatma, like Brahman, is so simple. It's like the most accessible thing. If you can't access Brahman, it is like the fish in the ocean. It has water all around, like there's no existence apart from water. When does it experience that I was in water? When it gets out of water. Now what Brahman is something that there is no place that is void of Brahman. So we can never get out of Brahman. Normally, when the fish gets out of water, it experiences that I was in water and I need to go back. But there's no place we get out of Brahman. So what happens is, even though Brahman is so near, like it's so accessible, we just miss Brahman because it is that much accessible to us. That because we always want something that gets to our senses, something that we're always going outside, like something that triggers our mind. We can never stay silent and just experience existence itself. So that's how simple they say it is.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I want to bring in the discussion that we had from Owen Barfield on this point. Doug, that is a beautiful question. Is this deceptively simple or deceptively complex? Also, like, your point about inner and outer and the porous border. So firstly, I want to go into two steps. In the Indian tradition, the practice of chanting. Okay, let me firstly answer the inner and outer first. I did this meetup on Krishna. It was an Indian, like Marathi poem that I went through, where Krishna is compared to a peacock feather. So that peacock feather is a metaphor for Krishna. Word is a metaphor. It's something with which you are trying to relate this vast thing. You're seeing aspects of the word, aspects of that. You're going back and forth between the word, which you're speaking inside, and connecting it to the thing outside. So that's why on one hand, it is very simple. It's just Om. On the other hand, it includes everything. And the way you actually say it is in a living way, where while saying it, you're thinking of the whole. And then you're listening to the whole, seeing the whole, taking in the whole, and trying to condense it into that sound. So there is this actual living process of consciousness going on with the sound, concept, and reality. And that's why it seems to be like this, that poem calls it shimmering. This is the shimmering colors producing this enchantment. Well, whereas it is actually a very simple feather. So there is that simplicity and complexity in that aspect. The second point I want to make is the role of sound in the Indian culture. Because with the repetitive use of the sound, you see, sound is very profound. Sound is very profound. Doug, you had something, go ahead. Okay, let me go ahead and
Yeah.
complete, and then, okay, so sorry, let me go ahead and complete. So there are several things, and this is unique to the Indian tradition. I mean, it is true of human beings in general, but Indian tradition focuses on the sound and tries to think of the full meaning of it. So sound is something amazing. It is, or how shall I put it? Let me see. Okay, firstly, when you are using the sound, you are producing the sound. It is in your mind at the same time you're speaking it out. So it has both these characters of inner and outer. It is also full body experience. It is carrying your emotions with it. It is carrying your entire force of your body is coming through the sound. So it is embodied way of holding ideas. And the Indian tradition uses the sound, this chanting, in a very deep way, like neither the Chinese nor the Western tradition quite uses it. So maybe let me ask this as a question to Yogeshwar. Yogeshwar, what do you think is the role of sound and Om? I mean, the fact that it is a sound and it is being used in worship in a really unique way in the Indian tradition. Could you speak a little bit about that?
So there are so many types of concentration, and in Indian, like there is by sight, there is by sound. Sound is given at most importance. Why is it so? Because sight is something that is only going to come in. It's never going to go out, right? You can't produce sight outwardly from your body. However, sound is something that you're going to hear through your ears, and it's going to come through your mouth. Like there is an in and out. There's a two-way for sound. And that is unique for sound. That is truly unique for sound. No any other sense can do that. Taste, if you can take it in, you can't bring it out. Like you can't bring out taste. But sound is something that can go in through your ears, come out through your mouth, like two-way. And then there is something in the middle, like your mind, that will process it, that there is something. It will process that which comes in. It will also process that which is supposed to go out. So there is that uniqueness to sound that is only to sound, neither to taste or to sight or to touch, nothing. Only sound has these unique characteristics. You wanted to say something?
No, beautiful. That's
Okay.
beautifully put. Thank you. Thank you. You
Yeah.
put it really, really well. Thank you.
Yeah. And then also continuing is that because it's a two-way thing, there is something that when you say something, you can expect something to come back. Whereas when you see something, you can't expect like something be created by me. Can't be. So that uniqueness to sound first. Then there are also some certain types of structures, like if you see in the temples, there's this gumata that is put at different places. It is like a round shape at the top of the temple. What that does is it allows a person to do a certain particular type of meditation with sound. You can say the sound, which is Om. You can say the Om. What happens is through that gumat, it is constructed in such a way that it brings back all the sound that you produce, leaving none out. Yeah? That is what a gumat means. That is why the temple is made like that, with that arc structure on top, so that all the sound that you make can come back to you. Because normally, if you're seated in a clear place, sound may go out, and then you don't really know the vibration of the sound that you've made. But if you are under the gumat, you'll really know what the vibration is. You'll really experience what has come back from the sound. So you can really listen to yourself. You can do the second aspect of it. And then slowly by slowly, what happens is, even when you stop talking, because you're under the gumat, yeah, even when you stop producing the sound, there are these sounds that are certainly going to come to you, even when you're silent. Certainly. And then, even when you're not now, that is practice. Yeah? It doesn't come one time, but when you practice it, even when you're not doing anything, you're not even moving, you're not creating any sound, there is a sound that is going to come to you, experiencing that sound. And then, even when you're not under the gumat now, like if you're not under that, you will experience the Om itself. So this is a practice that can take you from you're making the sound onto you listening to the sound without you making it. So that practice can go on continuously. And since it's like a circle, and everything in Indian philosophy is like a circle, like it goes on and on. You produce the sound, you listen to the sound. And if that circle is completed in the right way, then there will be a time where sound is just listened to, like the Om itself, because it's not produced by you. The Om, the fourth type of Om, is not produced by you. It's only produced by nature itself. When you can listen to it only, then you know that you're hearing Om, you're experiencing Om.
Thank you. Doug, go ahead.
I wanted to follow up on the sound. I realized in listening to the discussion that I was reading the Bhagavad Gita for the first time in the 1980s when I was also designing an acting program, a training program for professional actors, and working with some really good vocal teachers. And I realized there was a lot of discussion about the Om sound by one particular amazing teacher of vocal technique. And a lot of Western vocal things, you can sort of practice it yourself, is you start with an ah, and then you slowly close your mouth, and you go through that sound. And that's a basic sort of vocal warm-up technique, that taking an open sound that's going out, and then you close and the sound goes in into a vibration and into a hum. So I'm realizing, I mean, all of that, which I thought about decades ago, is suddenly hitting me from a new angle, listening to what Yogeshwar was saying, that it is an exercise in going out, which the Gita actually begins with these two battle lines doing trumpet calls and shouting and drums and trying to terrify each other with their sound. That's what they do. It's like a wake-up call to, like, you know, like Bach, wake up sinners, wake up, you know, it's like this sound that, and then the sound can be gentle, and there are different sounds, but it's a real basic vocal technique, I think, around the world, you know, and even the sounds of Papa or Appa and Mama, the M sound, it's their masculine, feminine qualities, and it's really profound. And so that, it just took me back to some vocal classes from decades ago, the discussion, and I thought it was worth sharing. Because it is all sort of there, the basis of sending the voice out and sound coming back in. And one of the problems with actors is they get tense, right? Because they want to be strong. And so they're feeling the sound in their bodies, but it's actually not getting out to the audience. So how you relax and get out to the audience, you may feel there's a huge storm going inside you, but your muscle tension is keeping all that sound inside. It's actually not getting out to the audience in the way a free, open-throated singer just nails an audience to the wall with that sound. And they do it without mics. And they do it, it's a kind of a lost art, but it's a very powerful thing to sort of play with. Anyway, I'll stop it there. I could go for another hour on that, I think. But
Wonderful. Doug, it is so amazing to have you back and talking about it, because clearly you've been looking at Bhagavad Gita for a long time. So all the observations and there are just so many connections here. So for example, Om is the primordial sound out of which all other sounds come. It's not just one sound which is the source of all sounds. Do you have any comments? No? Okay.
and it's rooted in the breath that goes inside and out and out
Exactly.
and inside.
Exactly. And that,
Take it in.
and
And the call response, something, one of the key things in acting is not acting, it's sometimes listening, because when you listen, it's like a rock hitting water. A response comes out spontaneously that if you, I think Yogeshwar was talking about that. If you try to be a great actor, you often won't achieve it. If you jump and do a free fall leap, then some of the best acting comes out of that trust of the room, and not what you're doing, but what's happening in the room. You know,
yes. I did a presentation on Gita. I was trying to grapple with it. So I did a impressionistic presentation. It's been a while, so I don't know how good it is, but I thought it was decent. Joe, if you could find, it's called Singing with God, and put it in the chat.
Actually, I happened to find that an hour ago when I was trying to catch up with you, and I found that. I don't know if it's in my browser now.
The interesting thing is that it is a conversation. It is not one way. This is, you are actually taking in everything of reality as honestly, as openly as you possibly can. And then you are singing to it. And then you are actually listening to what it is singing back to you. And you go on like that. And it is in that back and forth process. I also find it really, really amazing what you talked about, the actors. If you hold yourself like this, in a closed position, then you are not actually communicating. You're losing a lot. That's what, it's like having and being attached to what you currently have. That's what it does. Like it constrains you. It stops you from both fully expressing yourself and fully taking in what the audience is saying, what the other character is saying. So like many of the acting techniques is all about having this genuine interaction between human beings, and words just riding on the top of that interaction. So wonderful, thank you. Next up, George, you had a question, go ahead. George, are you there? Oh, George is left. Okay, next up is Joe. Joe, go ahead. Folks, if you have any comments, questions, please go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's interesting the role that sound actually plays within ritual, and what it actually. And I start to think back even with the times of when I used to attend Catholic Mass or things along those lines, that the sound actually led itself to almost you were making a sacrifice in the process, and that it was part of almost a, I don't know, it was a way of connecting with something greater than yourself. And I find that there's a connection between singing and the ohms and our connection with God still, and within Hinduism as well. I don't know if Yogeshwar would like to comment on that, but there's a connection between, I think, almost the Vedas and sound and chanting.
Go ahead. Yogeshwar, go ahead.
Yeah, so with sound, so the first that came out of the Vedas was the Om. Yeah. Now, out of Om is what all the syllables came out. Yeah. First, it was one syllable. That's how it comes. It was first one syllable. Then it came into a manifest form of 3 syllables. Then out of these 3 syllables, all the different letters came out of Sanskrit. So now there is there is an aspect of yajna whereby all the mantras are used. What the mantras were for are for getting towards the bhava, getting towards the feeling of what Om is trying to say. This is what it means. It doesn't really literally mean that all the letters came out of Om, like came out of the Ma. But what it's trying to say is that because everything has come from there, you should take all the letters back in there. Like the letters, the mantras that you're saying in the yajnas should take you there. That's the essence of the yajna, because everything is supposed to go where it comes from. That is what the mantras were meant for. The mantras were for producing such a sound that can take you back to the Om. Even in the yajna, when any mantra is used, even at this time, if we can take you through the experience of Om, that is enough. That is what the mantras are meant for.
Wonderful. Thank you. Folks, if you have questions, go ahead and type an exclamation mark, or if you have comments, go ahead and type an exclamation mark. I'm going to give about 10 seconds and then we'll continue. Okay. You have another 5 minutes, right, Yogeshwar? Can you tell me a little bit about the Upanishad that you mentioned?
Yes. So Mandukya Upanishad. It is actually, I would say, one of the shortest Upanishads, which has only 12 verses. They're not even verses. They're like statements. So they're only 12 statements. There are only 12 numbers given to it. And they're short. The first statement says, everything is Om. For that reason, we are elaborating on what Om means. The 12 statements in themselves, they talk about Om. Now, in a way, sometimes it may feel like, why is it talking about Om in such a manifest way? Yeah, that the is part of our waking up state. Yeah? Why is it such manifest? Then we also get to the aspect of, if the Upanishad doesn't make it so manifest, how would we be able to pull you towards the Om? That is the main thing, because if it doesn't come down, how can it pull you towards itself? It has to be understandable by us that this is what it means. And then it can take us to what Om actually means. That's why it starts from the 3, and then it goes to the 4th. It will start with, yes, the waking up state, the sleeping state, the deep sleep state is Om, yes. But then know the 4th state, whereby no syllable is used. Neither a, no, u, no, ma. None of those syllables are used. It is just Om on its own. And it's reverberating. And if you can notice that, if you can know that, then you can also know your 4th state, which is away from these 3 states, which is waking state, sleep, and deep sleep state. You are different from these 3 states. That's what Om tries to do. Like Om, the sound itself, if you can differentiate the 4th state of the sound from the 3 syllables, then you can also differentiate yourself from the 3 states. When you differentiate yourself from the 3 states, you realize the Atman, you realize the being, what existence is. Because existence is not something that you see through these 3 lenses. Everything that you see through the three states are just perceptions. Some type of, yes, it is true. But then if you're viewing it through the wakeful state, because your thoughts are there, your emotions are there, you're going to see it through a lens. If you can see everything through the fourth step, when being is, then you will be able to see that what is even outside. And at that time, there will be no outside or inside. But then for us, what will be outside is also there. And what is inside is also there. And all is Brahman. That will be the fourth step.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Yogeshwar. I know you need to leave soon. So what I want to do is I want to connect up what we studied with Owen Barfield meetup on Wednesday with this idea of Om. I talked about it briefly, looking at the way in which Om works in Indian philosophy, the way in which word works. Doug, I know you need to leave too, so please, do you have any comments? No? Okay.
I don't have to leave right now, but before 8, I do.
Okay, very good. So what I want to do is the following. I want to now look at, this is going to be very tough. Okay, again, I don't know Gita very well, and I don't know Bible very well, but I'm trying to see the patterns because I see very deep patterns here. So look at Gospel of John, John 1:1. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. The Word was God. In the beginning, He was with God. And then everything was created through Him. There was nothing that was created that was not through Him. So if you look at that concept of word and compare it with the concept of Om here, okay, each of them is different and we have to respect the difference. But you can see the similarities. I see the similarities because the word is God and everything is created through Him, and the path back to God is through the word. Is by focusing on the word that you get back to God. Word is the only thing that is in direct touch with God, and it is through the word. Jesus says, I am the way. The word is the way to God. So you see that there is a loop between God and you. And the word is there both in the direction of you coming from there and you going back to God. So I see a lot of similarities here, but I want to open up for anybody who would like to talk about if they see anything that is common between the concept of word in the Gospel of John and the concept of Om here. Go ahead and type an exclamation mark. It's okay if you don't know for sure. If you just want to put forth your thought, go ahead and do that. Evanik.
I definitely see similarities in and God. I think when you think of God, when the Greek is the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, and from what Yogeshwar was explaining, it was the is 3 different pronunciations, and I didn't catch them all. But the is there's 4 things with the right? It's the past, the present, the future, and I forget the 4th one. It's like this. It's like similar to silence, right?
Yeah, eternal thing that is
eternal. Yeah. So God is eternal. God is everywhere, but you can't grasp to God, right? You can't, like in the form of the Son. Yeah, you could hold Him in human form, but for a period of time. But then He went away. But you think of the Spirit, you can't grasp it, right? It's not like you just can't do it. And I think that's the same with the Om, is that you can't grasp it. So it's very similar items. Like it's just very similar. And I think when you talk about God being in the beginning, in the past, he's here now, and he's in the future, and he will be here always. He is eternal. So I see it as very similar.
Wonderful. If anybody else has any comments on the similarities that you see, go ahead and type exclamation mark. We'll go with Penny followed by Joe. Penny.
So I was, honestly, I've been thinking about this topic over the past couple of weeks. So your question kind of helped me recall and I'd like to talk about a dissimilarity, if that's okay.
Please, please.
In listening to the Bhagavad Gita, I have a sense that there was I don't know, obviously, I don't know all the right words, and that's probably a good indication of what I'm trying to say here, what I'm trying to indicate. I had the sense in the Bhagavad Gita that there is a reality, there is an ultimate, which cannot be described in words. Let's just focus on the reality. There's a reality that cannot be described in words. It's setting aside the creator but in excuse me, in the Bible, the creation story is, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and creation occurred through God speaking words. So the sense, and this ties in a lot with what we've been saying in our 52 living ideas, there's a sense in the West that words are sufficient to capture reality because words created reality. In the East, there's this, again, I don't pretend to know this, but I have the sense that in the East, there's a sense that words are not sufficient to capture reality, in part because reality was not created by words, but through the use of words.
As far as I know, that is true of Taoism. That is not true of Confucianism. That is not true of Gita. So Gita would definitely, it's saying that Om actually captures. Om is the name of it. It's the primordial sound that has produced everything. So it is much more, it's very analogous as far as I can see. The view that you are talking about is the Taoist view. The Confucianist view is very different. It is saying that it's a social view of words, that words are used to control society and make society as it should be. And it doesn't have any kind of metaphysical base like the Tao has, or the Gita has, or the Bible has. So it is kind of almost like a word for the sake of controlling and structuring society without reference to the nature of nature or human beings or something. I don't know. I don't understand Confucianism very well, but I think the importance of words and importance of sounds is fundamental to the Indian thought. It is not true of the Chinese thought, but Taoist thought, but it's definitely true of as best as I understand it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Joe.
So I think if we took time and to go back over Aquinas and to really look at what Aquinas had written, we would see a lot of similarities on the importance of words and the idea of being self-aware. I think that that's kind of what Yogeshwar was actually explaining to us today. The process was how we are becoming aware of ourselves interior on the interior. And One thing I did look up really quickly that from my past notes on John is that what is thus formed in the soul is called the interior word. And that's interesting. It's because then he goes into the whole idea of the interior word, and he actually has here, he goes into the idea of vocal expression as being a cause in and of itself. So like, it's kind of a way of like almost first cause, if I'm understanding this. Oh, I got to go back and read this. But just in skimming it, there's an awareness of oneself in both Hinduism and in Christianity that comes from words. And I think that there's a strong relationship between those two. How I need to be able to articulate that a little bit more clearly, but I think it's there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, to look at a secular version of this, you can look at what we looked at in what Owen Barfield was saying.
Yeah.
What he's saying is that let's take the word grasp. So you have the action of grasping that you see in the physical world. And you use that as a metaphor to come up with what grasping is in the mental world. And you get that as a general principle. And then grasp of the inner grasp allows you to grasp something like a business, which you cannot hope to grasp with a hand. So it's a way of capturing, mastering something. So it is this loop. So concepts, words, are these loops from outside to inside and back to outside. Another way of thinking about it is that you're taking observations about the world and you're trying to come up with eternal principles that are governing them in these words, in your head. And then you're using those eternal principles to make the world a better place. So you are abstracting from the world, producing something inside and using it to transform the world. So there is that loop going on, which Owen Barfield does such a magnificent job of doing. Doug, are you familiar with Owen Barfield?
What?
Owen Barfield, have you read Owen Barfield?
No, I don't think so. I'm not.
Okay.
Barfield, are you saying?
Barfield, yeah, I'll send you a link. You have to read. He's profound. He's profound. You're going to love him.
And I think actually really quickly, I think one of the really important points that you were talking about, that loop, it talks about, Owen Barfield talks about how human consciousness and language both evolve simultaneously.
Yes.
So that loop that you're talking about actually is the basis of what his claims. It's the evolution of language is the evolution of our own consciousness, which there has to be. In the beginning there was a word, it has to start somewhere. So I think that I think if we sat down and actually dissected what Aquinas had written about, went back over what Aquinas had written and what we've covered here this evening, we would see a lot of relationships between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. And right now we are focusing on similarities, but there are significant differences too. So that those also will, that also is a very useful thing to see the differences, because what it is saying, see, the sound is very flexible. It is giving you plenty of opportunity for each person to actually grasp it in their own way, to have their set of sounds that kind of, so that like each person understanding. So it's the form in which we saw this very clearly is the part in Jnana Yoga where Krishna is saying to Arjun, this is how I understand. This is one way of understanding it. This is another way of understanding it. Take whatever you see from the core of your being. So that aspect and focusing on that aspect is, I think, different. from the from Bible. There is a difference of saying that, I think the Gita allows for multiple paths for multiple people, and optional ways of getting to the same place, in a far more, I think, far more liberal way, far more freer way, I think. But that's so that's what I said. Next up is going to be Dave. Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Shrikant. Yeah, the parallel that occurred to me is also in Taoism. We were talking about the Gospel of John being the way. In Taoism, that Tao is also the way. But as I recall talking about this and studying, that if you talk about the way, you don't understand it. You haven't got it. And the parallel is obviously in Judaism, which is the basis of Christianity. The name of God is Yahweh, which cannot be spoken. So I just thought that was kind of an interesting parallel. Thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely. I mean, just like Naneshwar was saying that the infant is what he is. You can call him by a name. So there is that. Except that Taoism kind of gets that point very, very, very well. What Gita and Bible do is that they actually come up with a way of using the words regardless, as almost like a worship of that you speak to God. You go back and forth, the conversation, keeping in mind that you can't actually get to God. You are like children of God who are progressing towards God. Can't get there, but the words are your means of getting closer. So they think that the words are useful, and profound. So thank you. All right. Anybody else wants to make any comments? All right. Bye, Doug. Nice having you here.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you. So how did it go, folks? Did you like this chapter? Now we're going to go for the final chapter, chapter 18. So I'm very excited about that. That's like the culmination of Gita, because it brings together many of the themes. So, all right. If anybody has any comments, you're welcome to type exclamation mark. It can be any general comments at this point. You can bring up anything that you would want. Sure.
Are we gonna do like kind of a, after we're all done, a review, kind of a summary of what we took from the Gita and everything?
I think we should do that. Evanik, what do you think?
Absolutely. I think that would be great. I wonder if it would be good, just thinking off the top of my head, if, like, I don't know if I want to say go back to the beginning, or maybe have have people talk about their favorite chapter, something like that, in terms of adding to the review.
Absolutely. I mean, I want to. I'm thinking of, so folks. So the question on the table now, and I would love to hear anything that anybody has to say about it. This is the time to do it, because then we can build that. I'll take all these ideas. I'll work with Evanik and David and Yogeshwar to figure out what really works and what we can make, how we can make it happen. Yogeshwar is a time constraint, so we have to figure out. There will be parts which we want Yogeshwar to be involved in. So we'll see how it works. So after we complete chapter 18, what do you think we should do? So just as a question, please go ahead and type exclamation mark if you would like to share. So one part of it is, I'm going to keep notes. So Evanik, what were your points? One was, do like favorite chapter?
Yeah, like, maybe people comment with their favorite chapter, or maybe it doesn't even have to be their favorite chapter, maybe just a chapter that, they may have questions on.
Sure. Okay, I mean, as everybody's speaking, I will have additional ideas. I'll just put them on the table as well. I can ask, what idea, or, top three, what, 1 to 3 ideas, not more than 3, of Gita have you found useful, most useful, that I would really want to know from everybody.
I think that's a good question.
Next up is Joe. Joe, what do you think?
So I would go chapter by chapter and then ask that question that you just asked at the end. So, I mean, just briefly, people for 1 to 2 to 3 minutes, what'd you get from, chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and then we go through and then ask the question, what are the top 3 things that you're taking away from it? May take a little long that way. It depends. That may be a little bit of a challenge.
Sure. Brian and Penny, what do you think?
I did have a thought. I'll turn it over to Penny too in a minute. I have thought not about how to continue this, but something would be useful for me that I was thinking about doing. Yogeshwar had said, excuse me, that in the Gita everything is kind of summarized in chapter 2 and then elaborated in the other chapters. So to me, I had on my agenda to go through just chapter 2 again and see, now that I've done the whole Gita, if I'm understanding it better, differently, if I can see the connections. So that kind of thing.
Actually, that's a fantastic idea. Rupali had exactly the same idea. And the particular reason for doing that is Yogeshwar is not participating when we did chapter 2. So we can just do chapter 2, which is like a great way of summarizing Gita and actually completing our studies. I think he started participating actively, definitely in chapter 4 and partly in chapter 3. So chapter 2, we have not really had Yogeshwar talk about it. So maybe that's one thing that we can definitely do. Penny.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that was occurring to me was kind of maybe certain of like the key concepts, talking about them kind of like in groups, like, the different types of karma, that yoga that can be done, and kind of pulling things together, because there are things like from different chapters, but, like the different yogas and.
Wonderful. I like that. So key ideas, I'll combine that with, what people find useful. I also another thing that I heard when you said is that we've not done breakout rooms with this. It will be really interesting to do breakout rooms on Gita, where people can get together, talk. So we can combine, some of these things we can use breakout rooms for, because that's going to give us a completely new depth. People will be able to discuss freely. See, it's the reason we have not done breakout rooms here is that I think this corpus of Indian thought is genuinely difficult to grasp, because the distance between the Western mind and the Indian mind is significant. So it has to start by you taking in what it is. But now that we have taken it in, I think discussing it amongst ourselves could produce good results. So Evanik and Joe, what do you guys think?
I'm not sure, because I think it is like a lot of people are still grasping it.
Okay.
So I don't know
Sure.
how fruitful it would be.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe if you had like a certain question,
No, we would.
maybe you could do a breakout room session on what did you get from the Gita overall, maybe something like that, and then have people talk about that. But
absolutely, we would definitely combine it with something like that. We'd say, what are the top ideas, and we will identify some ideas, and then we will have a discussion on ideas of Sthita Prajna, Om, and karma. We can discuss that or something like that, but absolutely. Joe, what do you think?
As long as I have Yogeshwar in my room, I'm okay.
No, your guesswork comes in my room.
That's a
No.
but I'm definitely fine with
Started
it.
a war, Joe.
Yeah.
Either your guesswork or Shrikant comes in my room. You can have one or the other.
Okay, so the easiest way is to turn the whole thing into a breakout room, and just do breakout room right here. But kind of something more interactive. Let's maybe we'll say, okay, so more interactivity. I think I want to keep more interactivity because I really want to know how people are taking it, what it is doing for them, what kind of questions or what kind of disagreements that people have, to kind of deal with it at that level. Next up is going to be Connie, and then Brian. Connie.
Yes, I like the idea of bringing back your diagram and kind of really having the whole Gita to have the diagram used.
Wonderful. Thank you, Connie. I'll definitely consider that. Let's see here. After chapter, you can do that. Do what you get from Gita. That's what Rupali is suggesting. That perhaps we can go with what everybody got from Gita. What are the key ideas that everybody? Excellent. Brian.
So I would like to also answer the initial question that you asked, which is, you're kind of repeating it now, but then we went off on what to do right away, on what to do as a follow-up. How are we taking it in? How are we experiencing it? Mm-hmm. For me, it has really been important just to listen. And this, again, that I've said it before, but this really accepting and recognizing the difference between skepticism, which I tend to apply to philosophical things, and curiosity here, which has just been really transformational for me. It's just one of the many concepts and distinctions that have come out of the Gita. But I don't have a lot of questions because I'm not questioning what I'm getting. I'm accepting it. And I'll tell you, it's sometimes when he talks, I recognize that, yes, this has been my lived experience. This is my reality, or this is the reality. So when he says other things that I don't really recognize, let's distinguishing it from understanding. So sometimes I might logically understand, the words he's put together, but other times I recognize as really true for me in my life, what the things that he's saying. And sometimes I don't recognize it in that way. It's just not a part of my lived experience, but I don't really try to understand it. That's not my first go-to. I accept it as just what it is, the way he's saying it. And and I'm getting a lot out of that. And that's the reason I don't know, I don't ask a lot of questions, but I just wanted to share that because that also is answering your first question.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brian. Very well put. Penny, you had something?
Oh.
No?
Not at the moment.
Okay. I saw the camera turn to you, so I thought you were about to make a speech. I think Yogeshwar has been so amazing. It is really, really quite rare because I did not expect the Gita meetups. I was very interested in doing Gita, but I didn't expect that we would get as much as we have from Gita, and Yogeshwar has been a very large part of it, key part of it, because what he has done is more than explaining Gita, okay? Actually, he epitomizes a lot of the Indian values of learning. If you look at his entire approach, he's studied not only Gita, but he studied every major commentary on Gita from all kinds of perspectives. And then he has put it together himself. And then he's speaking from that. And he's speaking in a kind of a non-judgmental way. He's simply trying to explain to people, this is how I understand it. And he lets it rest. And then when he hears questions, he tries to honestly answer it as best as he can. And it's just, he's a seeker. He is trying to learn. He knows a lot, but he's trying to learn, genuinely trying to learn. And that's actually the Indian tradition. Like if you find somebody really, really good, that's their approach of saying, okay, look, there is this Brahma it's amazing, it's great, and I'm trying to understand it, and I'm making some progress, something like that. So I think that attitude itself is of great value. At the same time, he's very articulate in saying what he understands, and he comes up with his own metaphors, own ways of explaining it, which is uniquely his. And you can see that. So it is really, I think it has been a rare privilege to have him. And I'm just tremendously grateful for what he has, brought to the table. I'm very, I'm really getting interested in this more and more. For me personally, it is kind of reconnecting with Sanskrit. I'm going deep into Marathi, which is the language I grew up speaking, and I'm learning so much about language and what words can do, because now I have got these two different tool sets that I'm using on everything complex I'm thinking about. I always express it in English and I express it in Marathi. And I find that I understand it much better if I challenge my English understanding with my understanding of Marathi. They have very different characteristics. So it's really fascinating exercise for me to be doing that. So if any of you were there in the Owen Barfield lecture, I've not put it on YouTube yet. I'm still in the process of editing it, but keep a watch out for that. If you're not there for that, it's a very significant thing. So I wanted to, I'm sorry, I like talking to you folks, so I'm just talking. One of the very fascinating things about Owen Barfield, who was a very close friend of C.S. Lewis and Tolkien. So Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, of course, are much more famous because they wrote these amazing books of fiction. Now, what Barfield did was that Barfield actually, a lot of those ideas of C.S. Lewis and Tolkien of ideas on language come from Barfield and what language can do, what words can do. So he's very profound. And there is, one of the most kind of fascinating things I want to do at some point is that he has this children's story, the first story that he wrote. It's called The Silver Trumpet. And it's the most incredible story. Tolkien said that it took over his household because he read it to his children, and then all the characters became like members of the household. So they would talk about it all the time. It influenced him a lot, including, his ideas on language, which influenced Tolkien a lot. So it's a short story. So at some point I want to read out. It will be a very interesting experience reading a children's story, because I couldn't find a good recording of it on YouTube. So maybe we can make a good recording. So any of you are good at reading to children, maybe we can take turns reading chapters of it. So tell me if you have experience and if you think you're good at reading to children, or you like reading to children. But it's not about children. Okay, it's like it is the most profound ideas. Silver trumpet is Om. Silver trumpet is the word, and it actually shows you what Om can do to a human being and to a society. It actually shows you what the word can do, what it is supposed to do. Basically, it reminds you in that single sound, when the trumpet sounds, people remember who they are, no matter what they have been. It lasts only for a short period of time, and then you need to be able to hold on to it. But you can keep blowing the trumpet and reminding you. So it is the best illustration of the power of the sound and power of the word that I've seen. And that is the meaning of it. So it is the most profound. It's basically about chapter 17, and it is about, John 1:1. It is the most profound dramatization of that in a children's story. If you go to owenbarfield.org, you can find it. You can just use the menu. If somebody can do that, just go to owenbarfield.com, pull down the menu, just scroll to the Silver Trumpet page, and there is a PDF link to that. So looks like Rupali, Evanik, Penny seem to be willing to, like reading to children. And I know Rupali is very good at it. I'm sure Penny has a lot of experience doing it to very, very tough customers of her grandchildren. And I'm sure Evanik can do it too. Ambika, very good. Okay. And I definitely want to try it. So it would be wonderful to just read this amazing work. Just read the story. So we'll do one meetup on just reading it. And I will go ahead and figure out a time for it, maybe a week later or something like that. We'll figure it out. But I invite you to read this story yourself. Somebody will put it in the chat shortly. Just go ahead and read the story. It's the most incredible story. Especially if you're fans of C.S. Lewis or Tolkien, and even if you're not, even if you like just stories, I think you'll like it. So that's what I would like, I would like to do at some point within the next two weeks or so. All right. So let me see. Okay, there it is. Thank you, Joe. So if you go to that link, there is a PDF file that you can download. You can get the entire thing. I'm going to keep this open for a minute or two. The Silver Trumpet, yes. You can say the subtitle is Om. All right. Anybody has any final thoughts? I hope everybody copied the link. Otherwise, you can always go to owenbarfield.org and find the Silver Trumpet. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. See you soon. Bye.